Hey everyone, let's talk about living in peace in our relationships. It's not new news that there is a lot going on in our world. And in American politics, there is so much division. The COVID-19 situation has drawn the battle lines of people's assessments and opinions in stark contrast. And there's a climate of frustration and of anxiety and fear and of rage that is going on around us. And the heart sore for me is to see so many families experiencing division and even friendships breaking up and even churches feeling the strain of the divisive spirit that we're living in during this time. And I want to share with you 5 keys to maintaining peace in our relationships, in our families, in our friendships, and in our churches. And so the first key that I want to share with you is that we need to lose our appetite for controversy. There's a lot of people that have this appetite to be engaged in controversy. They enjoy having regular good arguments. And I want to submit to you that that is not a great quality to live out in your life. The Bible tells us in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 4 and 5, Paul refers to this, and he says that there are some people who have an unhealthy interest in controversies and quarrels about words that result in envy, strife, malicious talk, evil suspicions, and constant friction between people of corrupt mind. It sounds like the days that we live in, doesn't it? And I want to say to you, let's lose our appetite for controversy. And let's replace it with key number 2, which is that we need to commit ourselves to living in a spirit of peace and not of war. Romans chapter 12 and verse 18, Paul says, "If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone." It's such a great quality. I have to tie this in with the thought of sowing and reaping. And just say that when we sow controversy, when we sow divisiveness and argumentation, we will end up reaping a war over time that we may not even have banked on. But when we sow a spirit of peace and of harmony and of love and graciousness, we will reap relationships that are strong and secure and steady even during difficult and divisive times. It brings me to point number 3 that becomes a key skill, and it is that we are not to quarrel over disputable matters. To not quarrel over disputable matters. Romans 14 verse 1, Paul says, to not quarrel over disputable matters. And so many of us have a deep ingrained conviction of the absolute and obvious infallibility of our own opinions. And I think we all struggle with that at some level, to have total objectivity, especially when we are opinionated people, as so many seem to be today. And I do have a very strong opinion about something I do want to share with you. And it is that I believe that rugby is a much superior sport than American football. And that the rugby athletes are much superior athletes because they don't need to wear the shoulder pads and all the protective gear that American football athletes need to wear to protect themselves. And so I have this infallible opinion, and I know that it is right. But over the years of living in America, I have come to appreciate the fact that this might just be a disputable opinion. And so I have learned over the years to not bring it up too much when I'm in the company of my American friends, in order to not unnecessarily isolate myself and forfeit some precious relationships that I have, especially during football season. And so we need to learn to see the difference between disputable matters and things that are worth engaging in, and things that really are just better left in order to maintain peace and harmony in our relationships. The 4th point is connected to that, and it is that we are to enjoy the freedom of having our own personal opinion. And so I just mentioned that I have this opinion about rugby versus American football. And Romans 14 and verse 5, Paul tells us and gives us this freedom. He says each person should be fully convinced in their own mind. And so Paul is not saying that we kiss our brains goodbye in order to keep the peace. He says that we should be fully convinced, and it's a good thing to study different issues and factors of society that are going on around us. And it's a good thing to be convinced in our own mind about what is going on and to have our own opinion. It is just learning how and when to engage in what issues at what time in a way that is edifying. The fifth point that I think kind of brings it all together, and I believe will go a long way to helping us walk in peace in our relationships and to maintain relationships and not forfeit them unnecessarily, is just simply point number 5. Let's not be so judgy. The church has been known as a people of judgment. And I believe that so many people have closed their ears to our voice because we have come across with such haughty judgment against those who think differently to ourselves. And Paul tells us in Romans chapter 14 and verse 10, he says, "You then, why do you judge your brother or your sister? Or why do you treat them with contempt? For we will all stand before God's judgment seat." And we need to remember before we enter into an attitude of judgment towards those who have a different opinion to ours, that our opinion is not always exactly the same opinion as the Lord. And we need to remember that all of our opinions will stand before God and we will be judged by His perfect opinion. And so we can walk in humility and extend grace, and we don't need to take the posture of judge within our relationships when we have disagreements. In Romans 14 verse 13, just 3 verses later, Paul says, "Therefore, let us stop passing judgment on one another. Instead, make up your mind not to put any stumbling block or obstacle in the way of a brother or a sister." Such commitment to walking at peace, such commitment to not unnecessarily breaking the peace and forfeiting relationships in the body of Christ, and I believe in our families and in our friendships and in our churches. The last thing I want to leave you with is my concluding point, and it's just that we need to retarget our communication. In these times, there are so many that have targeted their communications right into the heat of the arguments, and they've gotten into the quarrels and the controversies. But Paul says that we need to have a different target for our communication. And this is what he says in Romans 14 and verse 19. He says, "Let us therefore make every effort to do what leads to peace and to mutual edification." And so before we open our mouths and shoot off our great and grand opinion and with a tone of judgment towards those who disagree, and before we post that opinion of ours out on social media and cause a whole lot of our relationships to experience strain, let's pause and let's filter the spirit in which we're functioning, and let's make sure that we are targeting peace and mutual edification during these times. God bless you.